Step into the Dramark, a place of rust and ruin. Your story of decadence and doom awaits. Discover your faction, confront the ruin, and find out what you do with the time you have left. Role-play in a Gilded Age, where upstairs-downstairs drama meets existential horror. Our Brilliant Ruin is live now on Kickstarter. Back it today.
Hello, I'm Alex Meehan, Senior Staff Writer at Dicebreaker, and I'm here to tell you why you should play the first board game released by Larian Studios, the creator of Baldur's Gate 3. The board game in question is based on Larian's other video game series, Divinity: Original Sin. Set in an original fantasy universe wherein certain kinds of powerful magic are outlawed and mages called sorcerers, spelt with a U, are hunted, the Divinity series is also a role-playing game that plays similarly to Baldur's Gate 3. Larian announced that it would be publishing and developing a board game adaptation of Divinity several years ago and provided us with a preview copy, which was a largely forgettable experience that felt overly complicated, purely because it was based on a video game series that is known for its complexity. Fast forward to Essen Spiel 2023 and a representative from Larian sat us down and told us the story of how the design team for the Divinity board game chose to entirely scrap the original version and redesign it from the ground up. Though there was no negative feedback from the Kickstarter backers, the design team felt a lack of enthusiasm for what they had made. Rather than ship out the first version, the creators chose to give the adaptation another try. The fact that Larian was able to take the extra time and money to entirely remake a large board game says something about the company's current level of success. It's certainly not something that a lot of tabletop studios would have the option of doing. Nevertheless, when it comes to making a better board game, the gamble has certainly paid off. This new version of the Divinity board game is far superior to the old one, providing an experience that captures the soul of the video game series in a tabletop-first approach that is genuinely enjoyable to play. The tutorial is easily the most impressive aspect of the board game so far. Instead of dumping an entire novel's worth of text on its players, Divinity: Original Sin, the board game opts to guide its players through its rules via tutorial. Players can choose from 4 pre-made characters, each recognisable from Divinity: Original Sin 2, and find themselves on a ship that is in imminent danger of sinking. Thanks to this tutorial level, you're able to set the game up and grasp its core gameplay mechanics within just 20 minutes, which is a considerable feat considering this is a legacy-style RPG-inspired adventure board game. It helps that most of the game is played with a book that opens up to reveal each new location players visit on their journey through Riverlong, the setting for both Divinity 1 and 2. In similar fashion to the rather excellent Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, the Divinity board game forgoes cumbersome tiles and boards in favour of pages in a book. Not only does this reduce setup time considerably, it also makes packing the game away a lot easier, which is a goddamn blessing, let me tell you. Each location in the game features a collection of spaces for players to move to and explore. These spaces are connected in various ways, with players sometimes needing to take certain paths or even unlock the way forward to reach them. While some aspects of the game presentation look great, such as the character miniatures, the boards and cards, the locations themselves look disappointingly bland, thanks to the use of what look like screenshots from the video games rather than original art. It's understandable that Larian wants to save money where it could, such as making miniatures for just the player characters, rather than filling the box with piles of them, which is definitely the right way to go. I'd expect more for an adventure RPG-esque board game where immersion is important. The tutorial is also where you learn about the combat in Divinity Originals, the board game. Depending on whether you're facing fast or slow enemies, the players will go first or second in the turn order. The character order is determined by the players, with the only stipulation being that the character needs to finish their turn before moving on to the next one. On their character's turn, players will have several action points available. Action points can be used to move between spaces and perform various abilities and weapon attacks. What abilities and weapons players can use depends on their chosen character, whether they have a preset character or have made their own after the tutorial level. Yes, Larian has even injected their famous character creation systems into this game too. All ability and weapon cards in the game list what they do and how many action points they cost, with dice being rolled to decide the success of each use. Every attack will have players rolling a certain amount and type of dice whenever they use it, with particular dice colours having different probabilities of success. For example, these blue dice have a much higher chance of rolling a hit than these white dice. As in the Divinity video games, abilities and weapons can have different effects depending on certain elemental statuses present on the targeted space or character. While some single target abilities become area of effect, others will cause more damage or trigger other status effects on those they hit. This gameplay system encourages players to think strategically about how they use their abilities in tandem with each other, both to have the maximum impact on their enemies and to avoid friendly fire. There's nothing especially complex about the Divinity board game's combat, but it does move quickly, with good and or bad things happening at a fast pace. Players do have to perform some admin, such as placing tokens to indicate status effects, turning dials to keep track of health, and moving ability cards along a cooldown track. However, it doesn't feel laborious at all. Whilst the Divinity board game doesn't accurately reflect the intricacies of the original video games, it does offer a fun and engaging combat system that gives everyone an opportunity to do something cool. Other than fighting, players will be exploring their current location in search of ways to progress, gain new resources, or experience more of the game's story. When exploring, players draw the card for that specific space and read out what it says, preferably in a dramatic and evocative fashion. Think Baldur's Gate 3 narrator. These exploration cards often feature skill checks for players to try and pass. Each skill check will see one player rolling a dice with the aim of getting a certain number of hits. The amount of dice they roll will depend on whether they have any of the traits listed on the exploration card, with certain types of characters being more accomplished at performing certain types of actions, which makes a lot of sense in a role-playing inspired board game. Though the tutorial locations don't contain much in the way of story, besides a couple of side encounters, Larian has stated that the Divinity board game contains a storyline with many branching paths and opportunities for individual characters to resolve their own questlines. Each character questline will differ depending on the origin players choose, with the board game containing 4 entirely original characters not found in either Divinity video game, including Cassian, Fazana, Tanguistel, and Valley here. Besides exploration cards, story moments will also happen in response to round markers reaching a particular point for each location. These moments bring a cinematic element to the tabletop experience, making players feel more like they're controlling characters within a moving story. For example, the second tutorial location will see the characters having to dodge a kraken attack if they decide to hang around in the bowels of the ship for too long. Terrifying stuff. Once the tutorial is finished, players are free to make their own characters using the available origins, as well as abilities, weapons, items, talents, and traits, or otherwise stick with their chosen pre-made character. According to Larian, players will encounter various boss fights in the Divinity board game, each with their own unique gameplay mechanics that will require certain strategies to overcome. Additionally, the branching storylines will see players visiting some locations and not others, with the group needing to invest in multiple playthroughs to witness everything the game has to offer. A complete playthrough of the Divinity board game requires many sessions. However, you can easily tell it's a good video game adaptation within just a few rounds. Unlike other unfortunate examples of video game board games, the Divinity board game doesn't try to replicate as much as possible from its source material to the detriment of the gameplay experience. Instead, it translates the most essential elements in ways that work specifically for the tabletop. It's fantastic to see Larian turn its back on meticulous overcomplication in favour of streamlined fun, making its first board game well worth checking out. And if you want to learn more about video game board games or even read more about Baldur's Gate 3, please head on over to dicebreaker.com where I hang out for exactly that. Otherwise, stick around here for even more excellent video games about everything tabletop gaming. That's everything from me. See you around and, most importantly, have a lovely day.